Bava Nisos is the map that has been built up throughout and serves as the finale for the Janthir Wilds expansion. While a lot of people are focusing on the negative aspects of the map and story, and rightfully so on certain things, I want to take some time to go across the map and highlight my top 10 favorite things found within, because there's a lot of fun stuff to do and see, so let's get started. Starting this list off with a weird one and specifically highlighting the story is the Foundry of Failed Creations. This is an area that is directly connected to this map and is pouring out into this map, but isn't technically available to explore in the open world and is only available in the story. The final big piece of action in the Janthir Wild story has you going through the Mist Gate and the Pericardio Nexus. This location was a super important area from the original Guild Wars and has also been talked about throughout the Janthir Wilds expansion, and this place just looks so incredibly cool and is pretty much what I was expecting the Foundry to look like in Guild Wars 2. Now, the biggest criticism of this location is that you are only in it for 10 to 15 minutes during the story, then leave. And I'm going to be completely honest, I don't fully get the criticism. Yes, having an entire open world zone located here would be fantastic if the narrative was taking us that way, but we have to decide what type of style map we're going to get, and we got Bava Nisos and all of its themes with a hint of the Foundry that serves an important purpose for the overarching Janthir Wild story. On top of all that, we have seen this here and there, like with the Domain of the Lost and the Sanctum for the Path of Fire expansion, where I also see a lot of criticism about the overall narrative throughout the end of the story, which I actually agree with partially, but I actually enjoy the ending of the story here, despite it feeling partially anticlimactic. And I think having us come into the Foundry for a moment to wrap up story threads that we have been exploring throughout the main story of the expansion, as well as multiple events and side stories throughout the expansion, was really good. Now, focusing on Bava Nisos proper, we have the theme of the map. To highlight a little bit more criticism that is focused on this map, a lot of people don't particularly enjoy the theme and find the overall map style to be ugly, and I'll admit the map does feel ugly and a little scrappy to some extent, especially compared to the previous maps in the expansion, but I think that aspect of this map does a lot of good instead of harm, because the concept for this map is just really cool and pretty unique. You have Bava Nisos, what was once the center of a massive empire that could essentially conquer the world, that had completely collapsed due to the fall of the Mursaat, an ancient city with immense history, completely annihilated and essentially wiped out. And through the story, we see a mastermind of a titan who has essentially taken control of the ruined city and was able to manipulate others to further their own goal, using Bava Nisos and absorbing it to basically become its body. So as we explore an ancient city, we are also exploring a massive titan. And I think that is so cool. Maybe it's a stretch, but I felt some similar vibes to things like the Flood from Halo or the Zerg from StarCraft as I explored through this map. In the number 8 spot is the meta. Now this might give us some whiplash because I'm going to start talking about why this is basically the number 2 spot on this list, and then we'll see why it's all the way down in the number 8 spot. Largely, this meta is just incredible. I've loved the structure of Janthir Wilds' maps, where the Lowland Shore and Janthir Century were pretty chill and casual maps with a lot of exploring and a couple of important things going on, where the Mistburn Barrens still had a lot of chill elements but focused a lot more on structured events, taking you through the map in an organized way. And then we arrive to Bava Nisos, where the map has a massive meta. When the meta is not going on, there are a bunch of events around here that are fun, and I really enjoy the density of events in this map. But the meta itself is just super fun to play through, with the mild criticism of there maybe being a bit too much waiting in between some of the events. The meta and vibes feels kind of like a cross between Dragon Stand and Dragon Fall. You got a big event at the start that is really basic but actually really fun, where there are just a ton of mobs swarming you, like a ton. But as you clear through that swarm, you then approach the biggest boss fight of the meta with Lextalion, the Merciless. This boss is just so incredible, where it is basically a translation of Gorseval the Multifarious in both combat and theme, where the fight itself is actually decently difficult, and on launch day in particular, it seemed to bring out the worst in the Guild Wars community as people got mad at each other, where you really need to focus on defeating the spirits that spawn around him, similar to the Gorseval fight, while also making sure to launch crowd controls at him every 25%, otherwise he kills you in a super cool way. And story-wise, it makes a lot of sense for us to fight an enemy like this, given the stories going on in Bava Nisos and the surrounding areas, and overall, I just like this boss a lot. Afterwards, we split into 3 lanes and progress through the map, attacking organs of the giant titan Savus Saxum, who has consumed Bava Nisos. And thematically, this is just a super fun part of the meta, and gameplay-wise, I actually enjoy it a lot. But then, it ends. And honestly, the ending is what takes this meta from being a fantastic meta to one that is honestly pretty subpar. Once we defeat the organs, we are done with the meta despite being told to meet up at the final area of the map. It just feels like there needs to be something else here where we group up again for one final boss fight against literally anything, but especially something epic. Though if you take the lackluster ending aside and focus on the rest of the meta, it is incredibly solid, and I have a lot of fun playing through it. In the number 7 spot is the Keep the Titan Apart in order to defeat them event. This is a random event that happens in the southeastern corner of the map. This event isn't too important for anything in the map and is one of many different events that happen in between the metas. Though there is a very easy and quick to do achievement that you can do during this event, and you don't even have to complete it to get the achievement. The fight itself revolves around a central mechanic that many Guild Wars 2 players should be familiar with, where you have to keep the two bosses separated, and it does so by highlighting the Warclaw masteries with the Janthir Wilds, where you can pull them apart with your chain. And largely, it's a pretty simple idea for a fight that is relatively fun, but the dialogue during this is interesting, where the NPC suggests that these two titans are lovebirds. Whether or not that is a figure of speech or actual speculation can be left to you. And the number 6 spot is Case 382 Titan Organ Smuggling. This is an incredible side story added with this release that begins after you complete each unique event in the meta event. It is a lengthy quest type of adventure where you are full on investigating and solving a mystery like a detective after learning about there being a smuggling operation of taking Titan organ parts out of Bava Nisos and selling them to buyers in the rest of Tyria. I'll only show the first parts of this quest in the video because you should honestly go out on your own and solve this mystery yourself. It is incredibly fun and I had a fantastic time with it as you talk to many interesting characters, and I was constantly thinking about all of the possible options as I went through here. When you interact with certain objects as you do this, you even have some elements of D&D-esque interactions that can benefit you or harm you in different ways. And just again, go out and complete this achievement for yourself. It's a fantastic experience. In the number 5 spot is Anthos. This is an interesting character who is simply a mursaat ghost. You see a lot of mursaat ghosts around the Mistborn Barrens as well as Bava Nisos, who add a lot of flavor to the world and provide a ton of backstory and lore to the mursaat as a whole, as well as this region of the world. And Anthos is simply another ghost who does exactly that. But this is an incredibly unique NPC for one specific reason, and I tried thinking about all of the other NPCs in the game to see if they behave like this character, and I am probably forgetting one, but I'm pretty sure this is the first time we have seen this in Guild Wars 2, where Anthos appears in different locations around Bava Nisos to provide some of that backstory, basically serving as a narrator for you as you explore the map. And this is just super cool. Typically you see some NPCs sitting in certain locations who you can learn some story from, but it is just super cool to see a background NPC acting as a traveling narrator. Plus, this character in particular was the Greenkeeper of Bava Nisos before its fall, which allows him to provide an incredibly unique view of the mursaat and Bava Nisos, and even hints at a potential story we may see in the future. In the number 4 spot is the Help Kyung complete her ritual event. This is another one of those random events that takes place around the map, and this event actually highlights the mursaat ghosts we were just talking about. This character is a ritualist from Cantha, who you may actually remember from an event chain around Xindaijung in the Saitong province. And it is super cool to see this character return because she was just a somewhat cool, albeit random NPC from the Ender Dragons expansion who is now much cooler because her story and her character have now been expanded upon, and I do love when that happens in games. This character, if you remember, is a ritualist who were pretty prominent back during the original Guild Wars, and it was great to see them throughout the Ender Dragons expansion. But I also love how we are now a few years past the Ender Dragons expansion, and we have seen the story beat returned to in a relatively disconnected expansion. I love when past content and story beats are highlighted again, but it also makes a lot of sense in the context of this map. Because ritualists are masters of spirit who communicate with them, and there are a lot of mursaat spirits around this map, so she is using her skill set to help out the Tyrian Alliance in a unique way that only she and a few others can do. In the number 3 spot is Mantle's Arrival. This is the generic area at the start of the map that every single player arrives to first when they get to this map in the story. It is basically the transition area from Bava Nisos into the Mistborn Barrens, but is right on the edge of where Seva Saxum has basically fused himself with the city, so you have a really cool shot of the Titan. I do always love generic safe spaces, towns, and outposts and maps, and this is essentially the only specific safe location in the map that also features all the services that you would want to come to this map for. This is where the meta event begins, and there are a couple of other events around here as well. When you explore through this location and the story, you can get a lot of backstory of the White Mantle adventures coming through here that continue to help you piece together the overarching mystery we have been exploring through the Janthir Wilds. and largely it's just a nice little area that looks cool. In the number 2 spot is the Help Rysta Preserve and Sort the Mursaat Texts event. This is one of the events that I just mentioned that happens here in the Mantle's arrival area. It's yet another one of the random events that happens throughout the map that players can explore as they wander through this area or wait for the meta event to begin. This event is very similar to a lot of events we have seen throughout the game, but it has a very unique take on it, plus has a lot of fun flavor. Basically, you need to catch some of the text that Rysta is throwing out, and you have 2 jobs. First, you have to see if something is wrong with it. If it has a curse, you need to go to the curse breaking station and play a 3-step Simon Says. This is a mechanic we have seen a lot. If the text is illegible, you have to take it to the text copying station and use the correct skill 5 times to copy it. Another mechanic we have seen a lot. Then also if the text is infested, you have to take it to the pesticide dispenser station and get hit by it, which is pretty simple. While all of these mechanics are simple and we have seen them throughout the game, I like how this event takes all of them and incorporates them into a single event. But after all of that, the second thing you have to do is categorize the text by putting them into the right spot depending on what text you have. Then the bonus fun flavorful thing with this event is that Rysta will make a couple of comments on the books, like talking about how there is an anthology of poems from before the previous Dragon Rise, or there is a book about a Pavim, the first citadel, or that there is a book on bloodstone enhanced cooking, which are all just interesting to think about. But now for the number 1 spot, and everyone knew this was coming because my favorite thing in all Bava Nisos is the Traversing the Titan jumping puzzle. I love jumping puzzles in Guild Wars 2, and while we don't get too many new ones, I always love them when they are added to the game. I enjoy the ones added in the Lowland Shore a lot, but this one is just on a whole other level compared to a lot of the recent ones we've seen. For many players, this jumping puzzle is indeed pretty easy, but does have a couple of tricky jumps here and there, but it's actually a bit of a puzzle where you need to figure out how to complete it and where specifically to jump. I had a fantastic time playing through this for the first time, and I still enjoy going through it now. It's pretty relaxing with a bunch of fun jumps, and is also located in a very cool looking part of the map that is tucked away from everything else, and even has a dedicated waypoint connected to it. Jumping puzzles can definitely be a hit or miss for players, but I think this is a fantastic jumping puzzle for players who are at least a tiny bit interested in jumping puzzles to have a great experience. Moving forward with Guild Wars 2 and whatever else waits for us in the future, I sincerely hope we continue seeing pieces of content like this introduced, because it's just one of my favorite things in all of gaming. And that's my list. I hope you enjoyed. Bava Nisos is definitely a bit of a miss for some people, but I like this map a lot. It has been fun to explore through this and experience a lot of different and interesting mechanics, characters, and pieces of content. If you like this video, consider watching my video about the Mistborn Barons or my more recent video highlighting the Kessex Hills. I hope you are taking good care of yourselves. Have a good one, everyone.